Ladies and gentlemen, we are here with poet David Mcdermott, who is has over 2,000. He has over 1,000 poems published on his Facebook page, and he writes almost every day. Sometimes multiple poems a day. And we thank you so much for taking time out of your day to chat with us and answer some questions.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so I'm going to start here. When did you start writing poetry and why?
All right, yeah, I first started when I've been across to Ukraine and seen my girlfriend across there at the time quite a few years ago. And I wrote some, because we were using emails, I wrote some words and then I slowly expanded and expanded. I wrote quite a few epic poems that I'll never see again. And then I commented on a friend's Facebook page. I wrote a small piece for her, and I found out that she was a bit depressed because one of her dogs had died. But it cheered her up. And then I wrote some general stuff, and people came in and out of my life. So I have one particular.
And this was only 6 years ago that you started writing. You had you are by trade an engineer.
Yes.
But were you an engineer who wrote here and there on the side, as a hobby, and you just didn't take it seriously, or is this something that just really was a new thing for you when you started writing?
I wrote some stuff when I was a teenager and at school, but never took it seriously and never felt the urge to actually record things that I felt and saw.
And did you read poetry throughout your life before you started writing?
Yes.
And which poets did you read, and did they have any influence on you as a poet or as a human being?
Byron, Keats were a good starting point. There's been lots of different ones I've read. Read old classics. I've read Homer twice, the Iliad, and there's I can't remember the one before that. It's an epic. I've read that, so ideas crop up from things you read, but I don't want to copy anybody else, as it were, as far as that goes. I want people to maybe not know exactly what I'm talking about, but be able to take something away into life from what I've written.
And what specific influences did the poets you've read have on you?
I'm not fencing as much as I used to, but with Byron, Keats and all that sort of, although they were bent as nine bob notes, if you like, drug-taking monsters. They had a honourable streak through them because they did sword fence and duel and things like that. So obviously not bad men. Misunderstood perhaps, and not willing to explain the personal philosophy to everybody. But there you go. They're out there. So that's sort of a background to that.
Do you plan on publishing your poems in books, or do you like keeping them on Facebook?
I have decided at some point in the near future to actually have a printed book for friends and people that want it. I'll do a couple of thousand copies really if I can afford it, and then just if people want it, I'll send them a copy.
Outstanding. That's good news. I'm glad, and I can't wait to have a copy, and I know that our viewers will want a copy of the book too. A major theme in your poetry is time. Why do you write so much about time?
Time, generally I'm 55, and as you get older, time speeds up. So it's been physically proved that the older you get, the faster your day goes. So you've got to, if you think you've got, like a young man would have a long day, older gentleman like myself, the days are short. So you're right about time-related things. Shortness of time, long days no longer exist. It would prove that after a certain point that, and I was a welder, and timing was critical, and I knew how long the minute was to lay a welding rod. And nowadays, my timing is a long way out. So if I think a minute's passed, it's probably a shorter period. It's probably something like 50-55 seconds these days. To what I say, it's just an age thing. So, and I just enjoy trying to describe periods of time. So we have a thing in Chesterfield where we sit and watch things and watch people go by and things like that, and it's a time thing. So you'll sit for a certain amount of time, you'll pass the time of day, you'll wait till the sun comes up and that type of thing. So it's a theme that runs through everything. It gives the reader a yardstick as to what's happening.
Yeah, that's interesting, and I relate to your fixation on time. Now, you, I think, write and talk a lot about time as it occurs. So my question for you is, what do you think about time with respect to the past and the future, and how the present is to be viewed by people in the future, or what we are to make of things in history?
Originally, the past. I can't remember where I got it from, where it says angels have no memories. So everything that's gone, your author can't remember. But everything that's coming is not here yet. So it's all conjecture, but here, I'm here. Here in time, space, however you want to describe it. And then you get time passing, and we look at, when I talk about red and blue noise, well, red noise is approaching you. It makes a certain high-pitched sound as an object, and they make an example of a car. It'll make a high-pitched noise as it approaches you, and as it goes away from you, it'll make a duller noise. So you get red noise and blue noise. So people sit there and they don't know whether time's approaching them or going away from them. They're that busy in the crowd, they can't tell where they are. So does that illuminate that one?
Do you think much about the past? I mean, you made that comment about angels have no memory. I mean, is that how you think of yourself? Do you not think about the past?
Yes, I do.
You do think about the past?
I do think about the past, yeah. But past gone, we can let it influence us, but I try not to live in past as far as that goes. Everything is here. So there's a certain thing that everything's past and over, but it's like the chap that sits on top of the hill. It is described as looking outwards, and everybody looking up the hill at him. They can only see him from a distance. Have you read that one where a certain person is actually sat outside of him, but nobody can see that in grass? The description is, you can see me, and I look out at you. You're so far away, you think I've lost everything, but actually, she sat outside of me, you can't see it, because she sat down.
So I think it's interesting how you think of time also as a place. and the past and the future become there, and the present becomes here. But do you fixate on things that have happened in the past, or on things that you worry will happen in the future, or that you hope will happen in the future?
The here and there thing. The thing is, the description was, "I'm always here." If you're not here, you're there, and that can be in time and space. It refers to a certain person. I'm here. You're there. At a certain point, she's here, which means she's not there, and that whether that's miles away in time and space, in that sort of sense, that's what that looks at. That looks at me saying, I'm stood here on this spot. The other person who is there could be a million miles away, could be sat in bedroom waiting for me. I'm here, she's there. So when she's not there, she's here. Mm-hmm. And that's with me. So it's a play on words, and you've got to understand where here is and where there is. Yeah, so here is me, there is her.
Okay.
So it's a my play on words, and when you look at where here is and where there is, and think of it as two different people, and then there's a theme that follows through that.
Interesting. In your poem entitled "Now," you wrote this. You wrote, "We let go into free fall and sail away to places unknown to mere mortal souls who hide there in houses of logic and reason and safe knowledge and possessions. But then, I love you. We pass into a place we are unseen to those who hide in the real world." Now here's my question here. When you say people are hiding in their houses of logic and reason and safe knowledge, why do you use the word hiding? Is that a jab at logic, reason, and knowledge?
It's a jab at people that live safe lives. So they marry.
Well, why do you associate? What do you mean by safe lives?
So imagine a safe life. You grow up, you marry, you have a house, you have children. At certain points, the world's different these days. You don't run away with the one you love. You don't take the risk and do something, go to the other side of the world. You grow up, you go to work every day, you play football, you go to the pub on Saturday night, you play football on Sunday morning. That's your life. And to a certain extent, that's safe, knowledgeable. Eventually, you may go through a divorce, whatever. You just got to let it go.
So you're talking about, when you're talking about safe, you're talking about essentially not taking risks when it matters?
Yes.
Okay, so why do you associate reason and knowledge and logic? Why do you associate that with not taking a calculated risk? Couldn't it be argued that all the great risks were logical calculations, that this is the time to act and do this?
It's not a logical calculation to jump out into the middle of no man's land and tell somebody you're the one, that's it. Tell them you love them, things like that. Right. You don't know what response you're going to get.
But if you love them, isn't it reasonable to express your love?
That'd be my view on it.
Your view would be that it's not reasonable.
If you meet somebody and they're busy being safe in their house and their life, and they won't expose themselves to joining somebody out on beach in the morning, building a fire, watching the sun come up, that type of thing. People sometimes live safe lives because they don't want to get swept away with their emotions.
But you think that's you think it's reason that leads someone to be unemotional? You think that you have to be one or the other, like cold logic or pure emotion?
People can be quite emotional, but not want to involve the risk of seeing somebody on the side of the street, walking up to them and saying, "Hello, how are you?" If you don't go, you don't find out. If you stand and look at somebody and think, well, should or shan't, I'm attracted to them, if you don't get off your arse and go and talk to them, you're never going to know, are you? You're just going to live a safe life.
But isn't it logical to find out? Isn't that pure logic?
I wouldn't say it's logical. I wouldn't call that logical. Logical is similar to the Supertramp song, where you're actually guided into your life and you're actually told what to do, where to go. When I was a younger man, most people by 20, they'd got a house, they were getting married, they were having children, and that's a controlled population, as it were.
Is that something you would associate with logic, or could that just be called, conventionality, mindless conventionality, even illogical conventionality?
Could be, yeah. You could call it that. Yeah, conventionality. Yeah. Years and years ago, there'd be no festering. If anything were going off, I was straight in people's faces. It were going drinking around local area. If anybody said, "Oh," I would go and see them. Something went wrong, I would come and see you. Whatever, it didn't matter. There's no backbiting, sending somebody's mate round to talk to you. But yeah, they were saying, "Well, whatever. What's your problem?" So in that sort of, that is that in your phrase, to get up to it and have a go. Whatever it is.
In your poem, you write this: "Really, what problems have you got that make any difference to the sun coming up or going down?" What prompted you to write that? And what do you mean by it? What do you want your readers to take from it?
If you've got some horrendous problem, the sun's still going to come up tomorrow morning, and that's whether you're there or not. You may leave and no longer be there, and let's talk about it yet. As you know, I've got some illnesses, but if tomorrow morning I'm not here, the sun's still going to come up. So whatever problem you've got, the sun's still going to come up tomorrow. So you take it from that. Whatever happens, world's still going to turn. Sun's going to come up and shine. Another description is some of the problem you've got. World will keep turning. Sun will go up and down, and at the end of the day, there's so many billion people in the world. Everybody's got our problems. What difference does it make whether I've got a problem, whether somebody that lives across always got a problem, emotional problem, job problem, work problem, money problem?
What do you mean when you say what difference does it make?
Sorry, say again. You broke up.
What do you mean when you say what difference does it make?
Yeah, if I've got a major problem, any type of problem, what difference does it make to the world?
Do you say that like with the opinion that nobody cares?
To a small point, people have to look after themselves. Yeah, you can get help. You've always got friends that will help you and things like that. But basically, at the end of the day, you're not going to make a big difference to Mother Nature.
Well,
the world will keep turning.
But you don't think that like your actions can influence other people and make lasting impressions, and isn't that affecting Mother Nature because we're part of nature?
Yes, I like to think I make a positive impact on people, and I won't throw litter down on the floor. I'll put it in my pocket, put it in my car, empty it into a bin. I like to make that type of impact. But at the end of the day, we're just a scratch on the surface of nature, aren't we? So we've got to actually look at it and say, can I make a difference? If I don't make a difference, the world's still going to turn around, isn't it?
How does that make you feel? What do you think about that? I mean, for me, I would say that that kind of makes me feel sad. I wouldn't be able to have that kind of perspective. I would have to say, that as human beings, we are so powerful. We're the most powerful organism in the entire universe. We're the only organism with super intelligence and ability to build things, and you as also an engineer, I know, would appreciate that. So I mean, I guess what I'm asking is, when you consider how powerful we are and how much meaning there is to human life and how much we can achieve, and even going into outer space and one day colonizing outer space, I guess how in consideration of that are you still left with the impression that I guess we're so small and our thoughts and our experiences are so small in contrast to the universe at large?
It is. It's. I don't feel sad. It's making a point that if you don't go out to make the difference, the world still turns. How many people are sat there not making a difference and the world's still turning? So it could be classed as social comment, I think. Quite an old point. I'd look at that as a social comment on people that aren't inputting, and the world's still turning. If something doesn't happen, the world will still turn. If it does happen, the world will still turn.
Does it comfort you that the world still turns?
It'll be long after I'm gone, and hopefully there'll be better people to look after it better than myself and my generation have.
You think that your generation has not done a good job looking after the world?
No.
What would be your harshest? What would be your biggest criticisms of your generation?
Biggest criticism? Oil companies.
Oil companies. What about them?
If you look into oil companies, they've bought up, and we spoke about this today at work. When it went from steam to diesel, there was a train invented by a bloke in England that ate its own smoke and did 200 mile an hour. Now, you've got your oil companies bought up the rights to it. So that train was then not going to reach a track. It was super efficient or whatever. They were never going to see it light of day. Oil companies were buying it up so they could benefit. And it's happened quite a few times. Some of the hydrogen engines that were invented quite a long time ago, the oil companies bought them up so these engines weren't further developed. So you've got engines that don't need water cooling. The actual materials for these cylinder blocks that can run at some immense temperatures has been round about for a long time. but the patents were bought up by these type of oil companies for the engines that they got, the normal combustion engine that they were supplying oil and petrol for, to sort of be there in future. They're not going to allow it to have an hydrogen engine. It's only because it's governments there with lithium batteries and electric cars now that you're getting developments for cheap motoring. So, I'd say oil companies have a lot to answer for as far as developing a better world from a pollution point of view.
Do you find yourself also concerned with the amount of money oil companies have and how much of that they spend on buying politicians and policy, and putting democracies into a situation where the people who don't have that kind of money, their voices get pushed out of the way, perhaps?
Yeah, you've only got to look at somewhere like England, where the economy is now run because crude's gone down. Now they're saying if oil and petrol prices go down, then people's pensions will suffer. I'm sorry, but there's a very small minority of people.
Why would that be? Why would that be that if the price of oil goes down, people's pensions would suffer?
They won't pay dividends.
Oh, right, of course.
Yeah, so they won't get us high dividends, so all these people that have got pensions invested in oil companies will lose money. Well, I'm sorry, if the people that work in the square mile of London that are earning millions of pounds a year are going to lose some bonuses, I'm sorry, I've got no sympathy. You can't run an economy. I mean, the English economy is run on building houses and oil prices. The government got rid of beer, they got rid of pubs, they got rid of smoking, so they've got no guaranteed tax income from them types of, so they get off fuel now. So their major income is on tax on fuel. The price of fuel goes down, the tax they receive goes down. So they don't want it to go down because that's their major income.
So what would be your what do you think would be a few political solutions to hold oil companies more accountable?
To hold them more accountable. Political solutions. Not allowed to when they pay dividends out and stuff like that. It's if you go back to somebody like Scrooge in the Christmas Carol, and originally Scrooge's employer knew how to throw a party. All he needed was his firm, and this goes for all new stock market, and this is how I think it works. Every year they have to improve their dividend. Every year Scrooge's boss have got to make enough money to pay his staff, have a little bit over for party at Christmas. So every year these companies, the dividends have got to go up, the profits have got to go up, everything's got to be, if it's not making an improvement, even if last year I've got an imaginary company, it made £50 billion. Yeah, so then we look at it again. This year they only made £60 billion. I've got to make a 15% improvement year on year. So even though I've made £60 billion, my company would be sold off because it wasn't making a profit on last year's turnover. And then that leads into asset stripping. So I think we could control that a little bit better.
How can we control that better, do you think?
Public companies, the amount of like British Gas and people like that, especially in this country, are no longer public service. They've got to make a profit. Well, they work in exactly the same way. They don't just make enough money to run the company. You'll find they'll make a profit, and it's all about paying shareholders. So why have you got to run a company just to pay shareholders all the time? Shareholders have got to have X amount of profit. Why is it around shareholders? Why is it not around keeping company in business and developing? As long as you've got staff working for you, they've got paid employment. If you do make a profit, yeah, pay some dividends. But then they're saying, well, we've got to pay shareholders rather than developing a new product, better facilities, things like that.
So are you saying they're worrying way too much about their shareholders and not about other aspects of the business?
Yes.
That's very interesting. Good point. All right, so next I want to ask you, moving away from politics here, I want to ask you about your poem, On. And you write the following. You write, "Thing is, if it takes a lifetime to travel to where you need to be by standing still, you made it." What do you mean by that?
So we're looking at a person's life, whole experience. You can travel everywhere to finally realise that what you needed, you could have stood still for. You didn't have to travel all over the world. What you needed were actually here and inside you.
Can you give an example?
Can I give you an example? Finding out you love your parents.
I'm sorry, say that again. Finding out
out you love your parents.
Finding out you love your parents.
Yeah. Finding out you love your parents. Finding out that you're happy doing a task. You might work all your life doing a certain task, making money, home projects, whatever, and then you find out, well, actually, I like sweeping streets.
So, you mean to say that you don't need to travel to a third world country, let's say, to have an epiphany about your life?
No, you just need to be able to look at yourself and your circumstances and actually say, well, do I really need to do this? Do I really want to do it? Why do I go to work every day?
So it sounds like you're a real believer in self-reflection.
I've learned to use reflection since I started teaching, and know where it is. So I can look at myself, look at my surroundings, and have an appreciation of what's happened. But also, travel all over the world and find out that whatever you do, whatever you could join forces, see everything, do everything, and really you come back home and find out you found a woman you love and she was here all along.
You write in your poem, Philosophy, quote, "My philosophy is one that is seen by one only and is unknown to the crowd because they cannot stand forward." I want to know, what does that mean? Also, I want to know, do you want the crowd or others to see and understand your philosophy? And for those who haven't read the poem, if you could you share with us, just some of the basics of your philosophy?
Right, so we've got, when we look at it, and this theme runs, so you've got two players, and that's myself and somebody else. you've got the audience, which is the people close enough to you to see everything that's happening. Now, the play can take place anywhere, and generally, everybody's play is acted out in the middle of the crowd. You're not necessarily on a stage, so there's two people, they're actually interacting, they have an audience, but all this interaction is taking place inside a crowd. Now, this crowd can be in a pub, in a marketplace, in the shops, that type of thing. You've so many different lives and so many people at different parts of their lives doing different interactions. They could be falling out, they could be falling in love, they could be going from one place to another. So whatever happens, and you get two people, you find the people that are around you, the ones that can see it, are the audience, but the crowd is not aware that the play is taking place, because the crowd is just a throng of people. So you've got imagine a marketplace thronged with people. Two people are walking through this marketplace. The only audience to the play that's taking place are the ones that are directly around them, and that's why the crowd will never notice the individual. Is that more of what you'd like to see as a direction to that?
Do you think that an individual should make his or her philosophy known to to the people around him, to your culture? Essentially spout your opinions and try to influence people?
Yes, you should always let people know what your views are. Definitely. You should allow people to see how you would like to lead your life. I've always tried to be what we call a gentleman, but that's based on the 17th century duelist rules, actually. So it's slightly different than what you think when we talk about it. So you'd have to actually read 17th century dueling rules, and that's the type of behaviour that Dave will follow. So if have you seen the film The Duelist?
No.
Have a look at that film, and that's the sort of behaviour I believe that we should be able to follow. As a person, as a man, you should be able to have some real personal rules that say, this is how I behave towards a lady, this is how I behave towards a certain situation in daily life, if you like.
Could you give some examples of real basic principles of what you believe makes someone a gentleman or, let's say, a lady?
All women are ladies unless they really, really don't want to be. So, being polite to them, opening doors, not shouting, and no sexual aggression, shall we say. You don't go when you're not invited, specifically, shall we say.
That's just makes me think of the situation, happening in Europe, where you have these Syrian refugees and other refugees from North Africa and the Middle East, these outbursts of, sexual assaults, on women publicly.
Yeah, I did read a bit today, and I think it was from one of these internet, I think it was Britain First, that they claim that there's people, Muslim teachers, that tell them when they get to Europe they're allowed out to rape British, German, European white women to shame them. Now, how true this is, I don't know. But having travelled a small amount in their countries, I can see that being quite true. So anybody that's not specifically escorted to, especially to some southern European, Italians and all that sort of northern Tunisia, them type of people, if a woman is on her own, then she is fair game, she's a prostitute, which is unfortunate, but that's the way of the rest of the world. I would actually, if it happened near me or in front of me, I would have to sort of try and help. You know, I couldn't stand idly by and watch that type of behaviour. So I would sort of say, right, that's enough of that.
I want to talk a little bit more about your philosophy of being a gentleman, because I think it's very interesting. And I want to also, apply that more to this issue we're talking about, refugees coming into Europe from, Syria. What do you think is the gentlemanly policy towards the crisis in Syria with respect to, taking in refugees or not taking in refugees, and, taking national security concerns seriously also, and your opinion on even what kind of intervention should occur in Syria?
Humanitarian aid definitely into Syria. They need some humanitarian aid, whether it's tents, food, whatever. Yeah, but they've got to get on with their own political thing. But I definitely think that all these young men have been shoved out, and more or less, there are an amount of refugees. Yeah. There's an amount of people, young men, army age, have been shoved out to cause trouble by Muslim teachers. It only takes, if you've got 1,000 refugees, and some of them, they get into Europe, whatever, for every 1,000 refugees, if there's 3 or 4, and we've had some in this country, there's been some in France, as we found out, we arrested someone in Belgium yesterday for being involved with it. It only takes 3 or 4 to actually hold the rest of the world to ransom. They allow them to come in without any checks. Now, European rules say that as soon as they get to the first point of contact, they should be registered there and kept there until they can be dispersed safely. So you're talking hundreds of thousands of people just walked in, and we sat back and did nothing. Now, who are they? And that's the best basic question. Who are they? If you register somewhere, we hear stories about people going to Germany, then going to Denmark because they don't like it. I'm sorry, how did they get a ferry to Denmark from Germany if they're a refugee without any money? Sorry, I'm a refugee, I've left Syria without anything. And we saw one, he came on telly, he got to Italy. Next day, him and several of his friends bought a car, and they were off to England. I'm sorry, you're a refugee with no money and you've just bought a car. Hang on a minute, surely if you were a refugee, you'd, yeah, great, glad to get to the country. Now I need to register, sort myself out. And I think we'll end up with more army intervention where people are actually processed properly. And you can't, Austria's closed its borders, Germany's closed its borders, they're allowing hundreds of thousands of people to wander about. Well, yeah, Europe's got open borders for people that live there because we know who we are. So I've got a European passport, everybody that originally lives here and was born here has got a European passport. Under the treaty, we can all go anywhere, there's no borders. Now when these mass influx of people come in, 100,000 people walk out of Serbia and all that, Albania, and they walk round top of Italy. Great, who are they? Are they ex-military people? Are they? I don't know. Are they looking for a better life? I've had enough of this. I'm off. I'll go to Europe. They'll give me some money. There's no intervention in that way where people went, righto, and they've done it on. I did hear yesterday. They built a new camp in Dover, and they gave them proper accommodation, things like that. And they were seen dragging their tents away because they didn't want to be identified. They've got no passport, so they turn around to the camera and say, I'm Syrian. I'm sorry, you ain't got a passport, you're a non-person. So if you can't identify yourself, if I went to France and couldn't identify myself, I'd be in prison. There should be, I'm not talking about imprisoned, but they should be processed somehow. And it should be done fairly. They should be given food, a place to stop that's acceptable. I'm not talking about, I mean, they'd actually got steel lorry backs, and they opened them up, put furniture in, put windows in, and said, here, stop here, there's a fire, there's a carpet, and they'd been living in a tent, and they said no. Now, my point is, it'll get to, once this behaviour escalates, unfortunately, it'll get to the point where they'll send army in and they'll round them up and they'll put them in camps so they can process them. And it's not just saying, I'm a Syrian, and then turning around and saying, well, I ain't got a passport, you can't send me back, watch this space, because France will. Yeah, they'll go down, they'll camera everybody on news, and they'll say, oh, we're all Syrians, we're from Albania, police will go in, whip them out, you're going back, mate. No matter whether you've got a passport or not. Point is, you haven't. And the thing is, if they use the brains, they come in, they get their identification, they get processed, and after a certain point, they'll be allowed to travel in Europe free anyway. So if they want to go to Denmark, Norway, Sweden, wherever in EU, they can disappear into England because they've got proper identification papers. Unlimited travel within Europe. I've got, Polish friends that do it. They decide to come and work in England for 6 months, and then they say, I've had enough of that, I'm going to work in Netherlands, Germany. It's free transit. Once you've got your identification, no problem.
It seems to me that we could really address this problem if there was a international coalition to oust ISIS in Syria and, really cooperate with Russia and, not try to have a more chaotic situation where you're going to try to overthrow, Assad. And this way, although Assad may be a highly questionable dictator, at least there would be a semblance of stability in that country, and people would be less inclined to flock to Europe. Seems to me also that both in Europe and in America, there's concerns like you've been saying, we really don't know how to vet these people. And because we don't know how to vet these people, it's kind of dangerous to let them in.
Yeah, I've got no problem letting them in as long as they're completely controlled. And they're coming down, they say that there's a certain amount of women that don't speak English. Well, I'm sorry, there's a certain amount of people in Bradford, men and women, that refuse to speak English. We've got ghettos, believe it or not. You go into certain areas and, I'm sure there's places like that in Lower Bronx and stuff like that you won't get out of your car because there's a certain ethnic minority that live there that are going to, take wheels off your car and things like that, like they said in Kojak. It exists. What we've got to avoid is going back to crusading days. I'm sorry to say. We're all going to pile into the Middle East, and it's one religion against another. So ISIS, all of a sudden, is Muslim, and then you've got sort of European Christianity, that type of thing, is we're going to come in and sort you out. And it gets back to like the Crusading days, and it'll be likened to Crusade. The first time that gets mentioned in news, it'll go up. So you'll get all types of Christian, Orthodox, whatever, armies being sent into the Middle East, and all of a sudden it'll be a crusade. And we've got to avoid it being seen by them as that type of police action. It's got to be a well protected humanitarian intervention, so they can sort their own political life out. So slightly odd view, if you like, on that way, but I wouldn't like it to be viewed as a crusade.
That's a very good point. Now, I want to talk about your poem, Truth. You write in that poem, towards the end of it, you write this: I face out and am unafraid of what I found inside the truth. Has been seen by all, only one can see. It is only for one to know. It will never change. I want to know, most specifically, what do you mean when you say truth is only for one to know? And I ask that because I wonder, also, how do you look at that and then consider universal truth and science and facts, etc.?
It was written with one person in mind, and I'd actually told her a certain thing, so she told it to her face, and she knows it's true. Without realising, it said "I love you" to her, and so she knows that one thing. And I've actually said that before I die or anything like that. She knows I've said it, and she knows I mean it.
What do you mean when you say that the truth is only for one to know? I mean, do you mean that you take a love life to be something that's very private, or I guess I'm not understanding specifically why you would say it's only for one to know.
The words are never mentioned, but she knows I've said it at that point. So I'm publicly acknowledging that, yeah, she can read it. She knows I've said it, and that's just between us. I'm showing off. I'm using words to show off in front of people that don't know what I'm talking about, if you see what I mean.
Okay. Yeah, I see what you mean. In your poem, Someone's Crime, you discuss the crime of silence. What do you mean by the crime of silence?
So we look at, I think I was thinking more along, you've heard album Crime at Century, Supertramp. So you're looking at, my crime is silence, having not said what I need to. So somebody else won't know what they need to know.
Just yesterday, you published a poem on Facebook entitled Days. And there's a line in that poem that I absolutely love. You wrote this: would you do anything if you did see any kind of unsettling act in the world, or do you just watch and become the audience? I want to pose that exact question to you. Would you do anything if you did see any kind of unsettling act in the world, or do you just watch and become the audience?
I never want to be in the audience, as it were. I want to be in there being a player. So if I saw an unsettling act, yes, I would comment on it. Yes, I would try and be involved. For instance, we had a small incident where we're living now. Somebody came round, chucked a load of garden waste over the fence, right back. So my partner said, Julie, she said, well, leave it, it's up to council to sort it out, because I said, hold on. So I sent council an email, went down, there were about 2 wheelbarrows full of rubbish, chucked it straight over back onto the road. Yeah, get involved, yeah, definitely.
You know, I think it's just that line of yours. It's so powerful, and it's such a powerful message, and one that I think the world really needs to hear. Because, and I can't speak to a situation in England, but I could tell you in America, there's just a large segment of the population that seems apathetic towards politics. You know, they don't go out and vote. They don't inform themselves. And you know, do you notice this kind of apathy in England?
Yes. You get quite a few people who vote, and there's a lot of to-ins and throw-ins. We've only got this sort of first past the post system, and it's the same people doing the same thing all the time, and you get nothing happening. You get people, years ago there were blokes who's, I've got an opinion on this, and well, did you vote Conservative or Labour? Oh, I don't vote. Local things happen and people just go, well, it's council. And you've got councillors, fingers in pie, stuff like that. They get good holidays, and all of a sudden they're riding around in a new car and the mortgage is paid up to date, whereas they knew they were struggling before. It's all out there. As one local to us now is... I was informed by one of his community, is actually, I'll guard my words here, I can prove it, he works for local council, but he buys and sells houses. Cash money, don't declare it. So if you see somebody struggling with a mortgage, you go around and say, well, I'll give you 3/4 or 2/3 at value at property. But you've not got to tell anybody. He's supposedly a lonely council worker, and I think he's got 25 houses at the moment. And he's a very bad landlord, but nobody will point a finger at him. Didn't say a deal to me. 6'3" and pointedly, how's your new house, mate? Oh, I haven't got a new house, so I just showed him a piece of paper with an address on it, and I said, how's your new house? I said, you better disappear. Not so that's enough of that. So we can sort of look at that. You've got people that are in power doing one thing and another, and people will say, oh well, that's what they get up to. No, I'm sorry, you should be honest about your working and your policies. So we've got politicians that have got 3 and 4 jobs and consultancies and things like that, and they say, oh, I'm a poor person. No, sorry, bye. You know, you're talking to the wrong man. I've seen pockets lined and one thing and another and how they've done it, and then they turn around and say, well, you can't do it. So what are you going to do? I'm not one of these people that will go quietly, if you like.
What do you think is the solution to the apathy that plagues our societies?
Solution to apathy. Solution to apathy.
Or do you think it's just human nature for for
There's a certain
most
amount
people
of
to be
human nature
apathetic.
in it, but the solution to apathy is show people how they benefit by getting involved. I'm all for rehabilitating people in society and getting involved. I'm all for the old American system where the road gangs, where you see people out chopping grass down at the side of the road. I'm sure the system weren't unfair, but we used to have a system of working prisons where it was pointless work. You just sort of turned a barrel round and got a brake on it. But I think if people can see there's a difference, like you've got people in prison, but actually, if you get them out 5 days a week, clean inside at M1 up, they're all empty Coke cans, and that's the difference we need. People need to be able to see that, yes, instead of council tightening the belt, they're actually out there employing people that are cutting grass, sweeping streets. We've had loads and loads of floods just lately. Now, I bet there's not many people have seen a gully sucking wagon, which is the one that sucks the dirt out of the gullies, for ages. So if people can see that things are being done, perhaps they'll get off their arses and have a look at joining in, having a voice, instead of saying afterwards, well, you've done nothing. Well, go down and say it in the first place, open your mouth.
Amen to that. Well, Mr. McDermott, I am so grateful for you being willing to speak with us, and I want to encourage everybody to visit David McDermott's Facebook page and read his poetry. He has over 1,097 poems on his Facebook page, and he is planning on publishing a book in the future. Thank you so much for your time.
Brilliant, thanks very much.